Cool. So in this video, I'm going to run through some edits that need, some images that need editing. I'm going to show you exactly how I edit them, the ups and downs, the twists, the turmoils, the software that you don't need, that you might need, and everything in between. Now, I can already spot some issues with these files. So what I've done just before I got started here was I pulled the original raw files here. I then processed them through a tool called DxO Pure Raw. So this is not a sponsored video or anything like that, but I use Pure Raw for sharpening and demosaicing and denoising all my images, especially if it's going to be a quick 2-minute edit that no one's ever going to see, or it's going to be in a video for 30 seconds, fine. But if it's actually a image that I care about, then I will do, if I just turn off lens distortion, I will go through this process. So hopefully you can see the difference here in sharpness. Let's just let it update on the right-hand side. And it makes a massive difference to both noise reduction and sharpness. I've got a pretty beastie computer and it's not always that fast. But hopefully you can see that difference there. We're zoomed in at 160%. And to my eye on the computer, that's pretty substantial, the difference in sharpness there. But alas, as much as I bang on about this tool, I process these images and we've got some weirdness. So what does this say? So it says it's got some adjustments, which is fine, which that image is perfectly fine. But this image up at the top of Cat Bells in the Lake District, it's got this big blob in the top corner. So I wonder if we can go to develop settings, reset. Oh, there we go. It's got rid of it. Fine. So I don't know if it's DxO added that or Lightroom did something funky importing it back in. I have no idea, but you've got to keep your eye on some of this stuff because not especially with Lightroom, especially when you're plugging one tool into another tool and you're going back and forth. Sometimes there can be hiccups, and if you don't spot them before you start editing, you end up in a right mess. So which one should we do first? I think we'll probably do this this view up at Cat Bells in the Lake District. So this is a focus stack. So we've got one image here where the foreground is sharp, another image where the midground is sharp, and then hopefully an image here where the background is relatively sharp, which is perfect. Now, I want to blend them in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all. I'm going to go to right click. I'm going to go to open as smart object layers in Photoshop. Now, I'm not 100% sure on this because I've had conflicting kind of feedback from an Adobe expert and then a pro photographer that I knock around with. And they've got different opinions on this. The Adobe expert said that just importing as a layer in from Lightroom into Photoshop, the image is still a raw file, and so you've still got all the data there. The photographer that I knock around with, who's I won't mention him because I've not mentioned him on the channel before. I don't want to kind of I don't want to use his name here when he might want to communicate this in his own content. But he is absolutely convinced that unless you bring the file in as a smart object in Photoshop, it's getting rasterized down into a flat layer. And so you're losing all of the data that you would want to use, for example, when we look at Adobe Camera Raw in a second. So I'm just going to pull them in as smart objects. Smart objects are just a bit more heavy and taxing on your computer. Maybe we can take a look at smart objects in a second. As to what they are, if that'd be interest. If anyone's watching in the chat, do let me know and we can run through that. But here are the layers. So this is the midground layer, I think. That's the background layer. Here's the foreground layer. So I want to do foreground, midground, background, foreground, midground, background. And the reason for this is I'm going to try using the automatic focus stacking within Photoshop itself. Honestly, it kind of sucks. I use this since when I first started photography up until maybe about 6 months ago. Every time, didn't overthink it. As long as there wasn't any kind of critical issues, I didn't worry about it. But now we've been doing a lot more printing. Since we're doing a lot more printing, it's pretty obvious to me that it doesn't always get it right. And I'm fine. So the first thing we need to do is, because as you can see, there's slight movement as I go through these layers because the lens is focus breathed as it's gone in and out focusing. We want to go to File, and we want to align the layers. We can't align the layers probably because they are smart objects, which is fantastic. So I'm going to edit in, open his layers in Photoshop. Just going to throw them in here. And I mean, it was Adobe that said the layers are still fine and contain all the data for editing. So you gotta pick the sources of information here carefully. So that midground. Fine. So we've got foreground, midground. I don't even know if we need that extra layer. I think we might be able to just get away with Is that background sharp enough? Slightly sharper. I think we can just go with 2 layers here. So we got a foreground layer, midground, background layer. That'll do us. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go to auto align. So yeah, looks like you can't auto align smart objects, which is interesting, right? And then I guess I'll do it twice, right? We'll give the auto blend layers a crack. Let's see what it does, because it should only be blending in these rocks in the foreground here. And so you can see that we've got this black patch here. So where it's being black, it's being blocked. Where it's white, it's allowing light through. And you've also got this blob up here as well. So we need to do a bit of work on this mask just to make it accurate, right? So we're going to increase the hardness, increase the flow. I'm going to paint white in all around here, because there's no reason why the bottom part of that frame is going to be in sharper focus in the background picture. I'm going to do V, select my brush, V, just like that. I have to do the inverse on this now. Just painting up there. We'll just check the bottom of the frame. So on a black brush, paint in here. So the black parts of this layer mask now are blocking that image from coming through. And there we go. Just check the edge, because we've got some blurriness here, for example. So this is the problem with allowing it to do it automatically. Hopefully you can see this big, the mask has just not done a good job here. So we're going to delete these layer masks. We're just going to do this manually. And to do that, we just need 1 layer mask and a black brush. I'm just going to get the edges. And all I'm doing is painting on this mask the parts of the frame that are out of focus. So we bring in the layer beneath. I'm just trying to get the edges of this. And then we can just blast paint across the bottom of the frame. I think I have missed a little bit of focus here. See, on both images, it's just lacking slightly, so we needed to use a deeper, a higher f-stop number there, I think. So I think we just follow this down here. And yes, you are watching a dude paint onto a canvas, which is obviously thrilling content. I appreciate. Until we get into the rest of the edit, anyway. There we go. We have a focus stacked image. Again, I used to use the automatic focus stacking in Photoshop all the time, and I just found it not to be all that accurate, which is not ideal, right? So I'm going to do Shift, Control, Command E. I'm going to pull these two together. I always keep the other images just to one side in case I did screw up the focus stack. I don't want to go back to it, but we'll keep them there. So I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw, and now let's work on this image now that the focus stacking is complete. So it's definitely too cold because we've got the sun rising over here on the side. So we're definitely looking more, something more like that. Definitely way too green to neutralize. So I'm looking at the kind of the white parts up here, really. I'm trying to get them somewhat neutral. And then we want overall exposure. It's probably like too contrasty at the bottom of the frame. I'm just going to look at my black point before we get started. We've got loads of clipping here. So let's go to the light. Let's pull up the shadows. Yeah, bit of a weird one. I think we're a bit too blue still. And there we go, not too far off. Now I'm going to quickly just take a look at the sky. Just going to pull down the highlights. I don't want to go too crazy with this because it's sunrise, but as you can see, the sun is quite high in the frame. I feel like we do have a bit of a weird color cast still. Maybe something a bit more like that. Cool. So now we've got a starting point. So now I'm going to take a look at this to see is there a crop that we want to do here? Or are we happy? Are we happy with how it is? It's a little bit distracting. There's a little blip on the edge there. Maybe we want to get rid of that. Rocks rise around the outside. I don't think we want to crop in too far from over there. Could we scoot off a little bit at the top of this maybe? Just a wee bit off the top, I reckon, just to balance out the image a little bit more without cutting off too much either side. We still probably get a bit more off the top there potentially. Yep, something like that, I think. Cool. So I've not made it a smart object. The reason for that being that I'm slightly conscious of live streaming, recording the screen, and having 27 smart objects. We might just grind to a halt. So that's the only reason why I haven't done that. But with this now, we can now take a look at the actual image itself. I think the bottom side of this needs warming up. It's going to create a linear gradient here. I'm going to warm that right up because the sun is hitting it, right? And then put a radial gradient across the entirety of this because that sun is still a little bit much Can we dehaze it? And can we warm the color up? Just to soften it a little bit further. I think we're still looking a bit green overall somehow because I pulled tons of tint out of it. I have to come back to that in a minute. Have another look at that. And now it's a question of where do we want to go with the image? So I think we need to increase the juxtaposition of the light hitting these rocks here, because if that doesn't grab the viewer's attention as soon as they jump into the image, it's not doing its job. So I'm going to select the right color, I'm going to increase the luminance, and I'm basically like burning the lights here on this specific color. I'm going to do the same in the midground, and I'm going to avoid doing too much to the lake here because I want the eye to go down this side of the hill. Wonderful cat belt. We'll do the same thing. Let's select the lighter part of this. Just increase the luminance, just to see if we can make that pop a little bit more versus the far side of this. And then I want a bit more impact here in the top. I need to give myself a bit of leeway to get that. Probably need to pull either the exposure or the lights down just a touch. So now we're starting to get there. It's a bit much. Starting to get there now. It looks a bit more like a sunrise than it did previously. I think some of the shadows here are just a bit dark. I'm fine with the contrast at the top part of the frame. It's just here. The foreground still looks a bit blue somehow. I don't want to pull the shadows up too much because it'll just completely flatten it. It's almost just this bit around here. So if I select a brush, push those shadows up. Those shadows are just grabbing my eye basically, and they shouldn't be any darker than down at the bottom of the frame here. Now we're probably going to add a vignette to this in a second. And so we can see where we go with that. But for a relatively natural looking sunrise image, we're probably not all that far off there. What I'm going to try is adding a soft light layer and see if we can just blend in a bit more light and a bit more haze, if we can make the image a bit more magical looking. So we go solid color, 30, 20, 100 or so. Let's blend this as soft light. I'm going to invert that mask. Select the brush. I'm going to soften this brush all the way off. I'm just going to draw on this mask and see if there's just a bit of glow we can add to the image here. Again, only quite subtle. Basically trying to take the edge off, because if you're stood there, this white light up here is relatively blinding, right? You're going to be kind of like, well, you're going to be. I was squinting as it was blasting me in the face. So other than that, I mean, you got some dodging and burning to do in the bottom part of the frame. I think we can increase contrast across the whole thing in a second, just to bring up the whites here, basically, and to just pull them apart, because it is a high dynamic range seeing this, and then we need a bit more color and vibrance. So I'm just going to combine these into a new layer. Let's go back into Camera Raw. I want more vibrance in maybe not so much in the foreground, but across the midground for sure. We can just, by pulling up the highlights here, just dodge this further. Yeah, so we've still got like a bit of a sickly colour to the bottom part of the image here, which is interesting. You see the blues there, so they should definitely be warmer. But if we go too warm, obviously we're pushing reality to its. There we go. Maybe a bit of tint gets us where we need to be. There's still got a weird blue down the bottom of the frame here. I think this needs to be dealt with specifically with a brush. Not sure why this has occurred because we've only warmed it up. We haven't added. There we go. Just take the edge off that. So one thing to try now is a vignette, just to again pull the viewer's eye towards the center of the frame on these rocks, going down the side of Cat Bells to the mountains in the background. So we're going to set the mask. We're going to invert it. Once we do that, we can typically increase the overall exposure of the image to compensate for it. And that adds a lot of contrast, so maybe we'll knock that down just a touch. One stop down to half a stop. And that'll do us for that image, I think. 99% of the way there. We could now fiddle with this as far as we wanted, right? And look at split tone in it and doing all sorts of shenanigans. But I think for that, for the moment, is where we want to be, because I want to edit a couple more of these images. So keep hold of that, and we'll take a look at this one next. So this is up in the beautiful Yorkshire Dales. Again, it's a focus stack. Don't know if it needs to be focus stacked. Well, let's just take a quick look. So if this is sharp, maybe it's sharp grasses foreground. So the grass is relatively sharp there. This one, the grass is a bit softer, so maybe I focused on the tree. So we've got grass, tree, and then it's probably the small tree in the background is the next. So let's edit. There's a Photoshop. Let's blend some of these in and see how we go. This is definitely going to be a black and white shot, really high contrast. We're going to increase the contrast of the tree and whiten the misty background off much further. And let's put them this way around. So I always shoot my focus stacks from close to far. So I know that file 298 is going to be the closer, 299 is going to be the tree sharp, and 300 is going to be focused on the tree in the background. So there is a little bit of movement between those. We're going to go auto align layers. Then we're just going to blend these ourselves because it's such a simple image. So I'm going to add a mask to each of these. There's probably a shortcut for an inverted mask to add it in the first place. So we don't need to invert that one. We just want to paint on this now in white. On this mask, I want to basically paint the tree in. We just need more flow, more hardness. And this is going to get us a nice sharp tree there. I'm going to do the same with this tree. Again, we could go in pixel by pixel, but the only thing to note here is a slight shift in exposure between this frame and this frame. So we'll just do a brightness contrast, see if brightness just resolves it. Create a clipping mask, so it just goes onto the layer below. And there you can see it was like -2 on that mask is the difference between it matching and not matching. So there we go. We've got a slight Create a new layer, put these in a folder. We've got a slight transparent pixel edge because we have, when we've focus stacked, the images were slightly out of line. So it's, we just want to nudge them back together from that perspective. And there we go, our base image. Now, we've done the hard work there of the faffing around. Now we've got to ask ourselves the question, what do we want to get out of this? What is the goal? What do we want it to look like? So I know it's going to be a black and white shot. I know that for sure because it's not very interesting in color. It's going to be hopefully more interesting in black and white. So that's the first conversion I'm going to make. So I'm going to turn this into a smart object because we're going to do a bit of faffing around here in different tools and different filters. So I want to be able to go back to any filter that I've adjusted previously. So it's camera raw. And let's convert to black and white. Now, this to me now is all a bit gray. And you can see on the histogram at the top here, we've got big gaps between the lights and the darks of the image. So if I just go to the curve and I pull the black point further down, and maybe push the white point up, I'm trying to get a tone of, because are we clipping? Does it matter? Am I going to print this image? Nope. So the clipping doesn't really matter too much. But I feel like we're a lot closer there now for the image. In fact, you could probably stop right there, in all honesty. But we shall try a few things. So in Landscape Mastery, our training program, one of the chaps in there made a suggestion the other day, and I was like, oh, that's really smart. I did not know that existed. So if you go to browse, you've got these black and white filters built into Lightroom itself. So I usually use the Nik collection, and we're gonna go to that in a second and try it. In fact, we're not, because I may have a Nik collection tool that is under embargo and I can't show you. So we will not do that. They've put it under embargo and I can now not show you on the stream. So that's not the greatest marketing of all time, is it? Otherwise, I'd be using the DxO's Nik collection for this kind of filtering on top of my black and white conversion with the additional black point adjustment. And it's as simple as just running through some of these and just seeing if any of these look decent out the gate. And they're all it's doing is adjusting settings within Lightroom to make these, to add these effects, right? So immediately as I go to something like this, I like the lighter background. I'm not so sure on the lighter foreground. I think I want the foreground just to be a bit more dead, because the grasses aren't interesting, right? It's not even the shape of this tree. This tree is a fine tree, but it's looking over the tree next to it, which makes it interesting as an image. So maybe something like that. So if we, let's add that as a effect. And then I'm just going to add a linear gradient to the bottom and just knock off the exposure there. And do we want just a graphic white background, or do we want to do just a real subtle vignette around the tree itself, or these trees, and add to the fact that it was quite a gross, stormy, misty day? Because this is on the side of a hill and there's a big sodding mountain behind this. So you can see just how aggressive this mist was. So I sometimes feel like a little bit of a vignette around just drags us towards the trees, but it can also look a bit more graphic and bold without that. So I think we need to adjust it because it's dark in the foreground way too much. I think that's fair to say. But I like it's the top of the tree is just got a little bit, the edges are just getting a little bit too bright. I've just spotted this little tree at the side as well. I should have dealt with that when I was actually shooting. So we're going to have to look at a crop or who really cares? We'll just get rid of it. There we go. We can just resolve the issue. Not ideal. I'd rather not do that to my images, and typically I do my best to avoid anything that isn't like transient. I do my best to avoid just decimating them. Other than that, I think that's looking all right. Let me know what you guys and girls think in the chat. There is a bunch of people on Facebook. There's a bunch of people on YouTube watching, which is cool. So I think we can wrap that one there. We'll let the camera raw filter run. So you can see the filter is now down here as a smart filter. So we now got 2 images. And then there was this third one. So I'm going to open this as smart object inside Photoshop. And we'll fly through this. Now, I like the tree and the light. I don't like the composition. And I knew this when I shot it. I just wasn't sure because the light was dying, right? I wasn't sure where I wanted. So I took a bunch of frames. I've just pulled this one, but this is gonna require a severe crop. And I don't know if can we balance the hill and the tree in the frame? Something like that. We've got a lot of grass in the foreground. Can it be a 16:9 just to get rid of some of this grass? Keep the light. Does something like that work? Maybe. We almost need the tree to be the other. I don't know. Or is it more of a 16:9 with the tree on the side, or 3:2 with the tree on the side of this light? So that becomes a super simple image. You know, I don't think anyone would call me sophisticated in general, but that is a severely simplified image. Do I like it? I don't know. I think this was a bit more of a punt, this one, as to what we were going to come out with. But we'll take a look. So how much? So we've got quite a lot of detail there with the exposure. So if we still pull the highlights down, that at least allows us to see where we're at with things. So I think if we brighten up this tree, there could be something there. Again, like really soften this light around it. And maybe we can fake a little bit of light on the side because there is a little bit of light there. And just see if we can pull this tree up and out. So we need to probably crop a bit at the top of this as well. I think we're kind of clutching at straws a little bit with this image. So we'll put it there. And let's see what we can do by pulling the exposure down. So if we pull the highlights down further, we can't get too much further down that, otherwise we're just turning everything gray at the top of the frame, right? So that might be as far as we can get for the moment. So let's take a look at this tree. Can we do an object selection of this tree? Let's see how it's going to cope with that. It should do all right in the top half of the tree. The bottom half of the tree, the contrast isn't actually too far from the trees behind it, so it might struggle with that. No, seems like a pretty comprehensive mask, which is good. So I'm just going to increase the highlights, if there are any. I'm going to increase the shadows. So we've got haloing if we do that. So we've got too much haloing. We're going to have to do this manually. And to do that, I'm just going to select a brush, big soft brush. I'm going to subtly work on increasing the exposure on this side of the tree here. I don't know how much detail we've got there. I don't know how far we have to actually go with it, to be honest. I'm just trying to add a bit of shape to it, right? And we have got a lot of haloing around there, so we're already struggling a little bit. Is that haloing coming from this? Or is it coming from... So it's coming from that mask. Fine, so we have to work more in the tree itself. Just try and reveal a bit of the shape there. Fine. So now I'm going to darken off the sky, just the top part of it here, just to stop our eyes shooting out of it quite so easily. If we increase exposure there, I quite like the glow, but I don't think this is my best work from a compositional standpoint, if I'm quite honest. So now we are getting into the world of interpretation now. So we're going to do another colored soft light layer. And we're going to see if we can get a bit more glow, a bit more kind of light being painted towards this. So solid color. I always do 30, 20, 100. It, most of the time works just about good enough. Soft light. So you can see the effect there is obviously way too much. So we want to brush this in. Even with a little bit pulling that down, is we're kind of getting closer to the effect I'm after, even by just pulling down the fill. But I want this to be directional. I want this to be purposeful as opposed to just plonked globally across the image itself. So I'm going to start to brush, pull my hardness right down, my flow right down. Big old brush, which is fine. I'm just going to, can we just pull some light towards this tree here? So before and after. Yeah, I mean, that's working quite well. Just reduce the effect just a little bit. And then the next thing I'm going to try is just a bit of Orton effect around here, just to brighten it a little bit further, because you can see on the histogram we've got loads of room. This light should be blinding, right? It should be clipping, or you're on the verge of clipping. So I'm just going to combine these layers. I'm going to duplicate this top layer to create the Orton effect. I'm going to go to filter, going to go to blur. And also going to just brighten it somewhat till my histogram's getting right up there. Great clipping mask. I'm going to put both of these in a folder. So we've got our blur layer. I brightened our blur layer, and they both sit in a folder. And I'm going to put a mask on the folder. I'm going to invert that mask. So now when I paint on here, the contents of the folder is going to be visible. I'm just going to, again, just soften the light that's coming in around the edges here. This is adding like a slight bit of blur because the layer is blurred and it's slightly brighter. And that is the Orton effect. And I think we're kind of getting close to a more interesting image. It's a shame that the clouds are down a little bit lower and more interesting there. I think that could really help. I just want to get the edge of this just a teeny bit brighter. And you can see the difference here between the raw file that we started with, where there is no, where there is no directional light on the tree whatsoever, basically. No, tree is pretty flat there versus the light we've now added to the side of this tree. And this then goes on to, you go as far as you like with this. It depends on how bright that layer is, but I think that comes quite nice. I don't mind that whatsoever. Again, it's just shame there's not a few more clouds in the sky. And I'm not gonna go down the route of cloning more clouds. That's, I have to draw the line somewhere as to how much we manipulate an image, right? But I think that'll do us for that image as well. So from 1, 2, 3 images, all slightly different, well, quite different styles. Could this just be brightened slightly? Potentially. Just a slight bit more brightness. Yeah, probably. There we go. Cool. So we'll wrap up the stream there. Hopefully that was entertaining, if not educational. We've been through quite a few different steps, quite a few different ways of going about doing things. And yeah, hopefully that was cool. Just a few things to wrap up with. If you are wanting to have some of your, it's a lovely picture of a random person. This is the Photography Explained feed, right? We should see what's in down here. So it's a this is probably better than more entertaining the actual editing itself. Some lizard getting pulled out of a stream. Random people doing parkour. I don't use Facebook, so this is just what Facebook is. It's uneducated opinion as to what advertisements and content it wants to put in front of me. But I wanted to show you this. This is the Photography Explained Landscape Photography Photo Review Club. If you leave images in here, tomorrow I'm going to do a live stream. We're going to run through some of these beautiful images. We're going to give you some feedback, some thoughts, and not really a landscape image. And so if you post stuff that isn't a landscape, you get a polite message from me saying landscape photos only. But we have a beautiful photo from the main man, Stephen. And so yeah, I've got some thoughts for this. But it's a lovely image. This is a lovely image. Dan Park. Where is this? The Hudson Valley. Interesting. So if you want me to review your photos, give you some feedback, whether you have been doing landscape photography for 20 years, 20 minutes, doesn't really matter. You're going to get some polite feedback from me and the 3,000 other people in this Facebook group. Head over here. And then the only final thing to mention is we've got one place left in this April's cohort of Landscape Mastery. So if this sounds like you, that you almost get great photos, but something about them, it just feels flat or boring, head over to photographyexplained.com/mastery. You'll see this page. You'll see this video at the top that explains how everything works. And the program itself, you get a ton of photography frameworks taught live with me in a small group setting, weekly Q&A sessions, which is why I've got to shoot in a second because the next Q&A session is coming up. Access to the community, which looks like this. You see everyone asking the questions and going back and forth here. And you also get access to our toolkit as well, which is this tool here where you can look at your locations, you can forecast the weather, you can scout new opportunities. Let's just put this somewhere in the Lake District. You're going to see a bunch of photo opportunities pop up here at the bottom of the frame, the bottom of the page, and it's going to give you inspiration. It's also going to tell you exactly, if we zoom in on the map, it's also going to tell you exactly where these were taken. So if you wanted to create something similar, you absolutely can. That's quite a nice shot. That is where we stay, quite close to where we stay in Keswick. That is interesting. And this is the whole point of this, right? I didn't know this little river, Thwaite House. I often go up Shepherd's Crag, but I never go down here. So this is the whole point of the tool. Find places that other people have been shooting. It's quite nice as well. You save them, add it to your location bank. So here's that spot down there. These are all the other spots I've saved. And then you can go and forecast that specific place. Let's see what it's going to look like on Friday. I'm going to click generate briefing, and it's going to give me an AI generated photography specific forecast. of that specific location. And you can do it all manually as well. As I said, you've got rain, thunderstorms, wind, you've got all the data down here, but this is the really key feature of the toolkit that you get access to when you sign up to Landscape Mastery. So this is showing that it's going to be a moody wet day with a window of dynamic light clearing later in the afternoon. It's going to tell you that the sunset window is a bit of a gamble. Visibility improves between 11 and 1. So it tells you when you're going to get the best opportunities to go and shoot, so you can make the most of your time when you're out shooting. So head over to photographyexplained.com/mastery. Again, we've got one place left in the next cohort, and hopefully we'll see you in there. So give us a shout. Any questions on this? And